Madam Speaker, 5 minutes. Just last week we observed another Human Rights Day without freedom in Cuba. As to be expected, the regime had its thugs out in full force to harass and attack all who dared to walk the streets in support of this important day and what it represents to the world community. For 2 days, the members of the peaceful Ladies in White group were pursued and harassed by agents of the regime. Marches and peaceful demonstrations in support of human rights and fundamental freedoms came to an abrupt end as state security forces rounded up, detained, and brutally attacked some of the participants. Yusnami Jorge Soca, wife of Dr. Darcy Ferrer, was one of the many apprehended by the secret police on her way to one of the planned marches at the Villalón Park in Havana. Dr. Ferrer is an Afro-Cuban civil rights leader currently imprisoned by the dictatorship. His alleged crime? Illegally purchasing materials to repair damages to his home. The truth? Dr. Ferrer has worked tirelessly to expose the reality of Castro's apartheid healthcare system and the abysmal disregard for fundamental freedoms and human rights. Yusnami was threatened on this Human Rights Day by the Cuban dictatorship, as well as her husband, in an attempt to intimidate them into submission and silence. Those seeking freedom in Cuba, however, have shown time and time again that they will not waver in the face of repression. The Castro tyranny does not limit the application of its repressive tactics to the oppressed Cuban people, however. For example, Chris Stimson, second secretary of the British Embassy, was also pursued and chased away by the regime's mob apparatus on Thursday. And on Friday, an American citizen was detained, likely in response to U.S. efforts to support the inalienable rights of the Cuban people. We are hopeful, Madam Speaker, for his immediate and safe return home soon. For the people of Cuba, every day is a desperate struggle to maintain a glimmer of hope for a brighter future. Hundreds and hundreds remain behind bars due to their refusal to give up on that brighter future. We must never lose sight of the plight of those living under this dictatorial regime. We must also not turn our back on these individuals by cutting deals with their oppressors. We must not put principle over profit, security before popularity. Though the Castro tyranny may try to convince the world otherwise, it will never miss an opportunity to tighten its iron grip on liberty. It is time that the cruel veil of hypocrisy be lifted. The Cuban people are no less worthy of freedom and human rights than any other oppressed population. Nations and organizations and leaders worldwide, they do not hesitate to denounce the genocidal regime in Sudan, and I agree with them, or the brutal military junta in Burma, and I agree with them. However, they remain silent, and I don't agree with them, when it comes to the cries of those dying in Castro's jails because they seek freedom and democracy for their Cuban nation. How much more must the Cuban people suffer before the world acts decisively against this cruel regime and its communist leaders? Those who ignore the struggles of the Cuban people serve as willing accomplices to their brutal oppressors. As Cuban dissident Dr. Ferrer said in his jail cell, in his call for all Cubans to peacefully commemorate Human Rights Day, and I quote, "Governments, institutions, organizations, and human beings in general have an obligation to promote respect for fundamental rights and freedoms, as well as ensure their recognition and universal and effective application." Dr. Ferrer continued, "Our appeal will be for the recognition in every corner of the earth for the inherent dignity and equal and inalienable rights of all members of the human family," end quote. Today, Madam Speaker, let us renew our commitment to bring the light of freedom to those living in the darkness of oppression, wherever that darkness. Today, let us make clear that we will not stand for another Human Rights Day without freedom in Cuba. Thank you, Madam Speaker, for the time.